Special technique. Special technique of shadow boxing. Special technique of shadow boxing. Shadow boxing. Shadow boxing.
Yeah. What's going on? You are here live on the Boxing Source radio show here on the Go Long Media channel on Blog Talk Radio. I am your host, James Bell, lead boxing analyst for the Cold Hard Truth on Sports, giving you boxing articles on thechtonsports.com. Once again, thechtonsports.com. So you can check out articles that I write there, and also, contribute to sister shows here on the Go Long Media channel. We have a lot to cover here on this week's episode on Sunday, December 10th, 2017. As we had a lot of fights going on over the course of the weekend. Just wanted to, focus on a few events that happened on Friday and Saturday. So we're going to be going through all of that here tonight. Number to dial in to talk boxing is 347-237-5539. Once again, 347-237-5539. Be able to press the one key to get on cue, and you'll be able to talk live on the show. Here was I just wanted to just go through, as much as I possibly could here over the week in the sport of boxing, and we had, a few things that I wanted to go through. You had, events going on Friday night in Hialeah, Florida, and then Saturday night we had three events with one being overseas, over the pond in the UK. Then here stateside you had an event in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay, and then also you had something going down at the theater in Madison Square Garden. So we're going to be trying to get in depth on, each one of those things there in this particular show. Once again, this is going to be a field show, 2 hours to try to, get through as much as we can here in the sport of boxing. So just want to, get pretty much right into it here pretty soon. But first, I wanted to, get just this quick commercial thing here, and then we'll get right into the boxing talk. Once again, this is the Boxing Source radio show on the Go Long Media channel on Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, all this is Matthew Long with the Cold Hard Truth on Sports and the Triangle Offense. I just wanted to take some time to tell you about PestBear, a wonderful company. They've been around for 20 plus years. They have over 11 branches in Florida. Great licensed, certified specialists, and guess what? They do more than pest control. They also take care of termites as well as lawn care, sprinkler systems, and much, much more. Call today, 1-800-PEST-BEAR. That's 1-800-737-8232.
WCSB Sports and MRN Broadcasting, powered by blogtalkradio.com.
All right, we are back here on the Boxing Source Radio Show on the Go Long Media channel on Blog Talk Radio. Once again, the number to dial to talk boxing is 347-237-5539. That is 347-237-5539. Press the 1 key to get on cue, and you'll be able to talk live on the show. Just getting right into the boxing talk. Wanted to, divide this thing up into segments here. And the first thing that I wanted to do was get into the fight card that was in Hialeah, Florida, as you had a couple of fights going on, over there that were featured on Fox Sports 1. So it was Premier Boxing Champions on Fox Sports 1. And the feature bout had Jean Pascal in the ring there in a fight against undefeated Ahmed Elbiali. This fight was showcased as a main event there for this fight card under Warriors Boxing in Hialeah, and you had Ahmed Elbiali coming in there, 16-0, undefeated, a prospect that, people were seeing if what he was going to particularly do. They're coming out of, Egypt, born in Cairo, currently residing in Miami, Florida. And he had a run of 16 consecutive wins in his career. A good number of those wins coming in 4-round bouts, and he gradually went up to 6- and 8-round bouts, and had a 10-round bout in July 18th against Christopher Brooker, and got a TKO victory in the second round in that particular fight. And so he was going up against Jean Pascal. Of course, we know about Pascal there being a former world champion in the light heavyweight division. Having those notable fights, defeating Chad Dawson in 2010, winning his first world championship against Adrian Diaconou in 2009, but like I was saying, defeated Chad Dawson in 2010 to become unified champion, but ended up losing to Bernard Hopkins the next year. Had a couple of other fights there in the light heavyweight division, lost twice to Sergey Kovalev over the past couple of years. basically getting knocked out in both of those fights. And his latest fight was earlier this year where he was, outboxed by Elder Alvarez, who was there undefeated. So looked like he was in the downturn of his career. So he had this fight with Ahmed Elbiali, and he was basically gonna call it a career after this particular fight with Elbiali. So people were thinking that with it being the downturn of his career, he wasn't necessarily going to be that much of a challenge for someone like Elbiali. But I mean, Elbiali, this was just his second professional fight where he was in a 10-round fight. And so it was a I would say like a back and forth fight between Elbiali and Jean Pascal there. It looked like, Jean Pascal was using his experience against the youth of Ahmed Elbiali, and Elbiali was getting caught with a few good number of counters in this particular fight. Those right hands were coming back at him, and Elbiali was trying to box with he was trying to box with Jean Pascal here in this particular fight, and the boxing skills of Elbiali were not enough to basically keep Jean Pascal at bay, and so those right hand counters were starting to take a toll on Elbiali, and eventually Pascal was having a little bit of an advantage in round 5. And then going into round 6, those right hands were, continuing to come at Elbiali, and he ended up getting forced back into the ropes, I would say, and he was hurt by Pascal's punches. And with Elbiali backed up into the ropes, Pascal was continuing his attack, mixing it up, going upstairs and downstairs, but also, hitting with those big right hands that were scoring for him over the course of this fight. And, with that barrage that was happening there in the corner, was a neutral corner, but it was on the side where, Elbiali's trainers and chief seconds and the doctors around there were around that particular side. And someone from Elbiali's corner came up to the edge of the ring and stepped in and called for the referee to put a halt to the bout in 2 minutes, 6 seconds within round 6. So there you had Jean Pascal score a TKO victory. He scored a TKO victory over Ahmed Elbiali, giving Elbiali his first professional loss of his career, and for Jean Pascal to move to 32 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. And I think this was this came out to be, I guess, a good note for Jean Pascal. I know that there were people buzzing right after this particular fight result that maybe Jean Pascal would fight again or see if he could get another big fight. But he said, after the fight, that he promised his mother and his grandmother that this would be his final fight, and that he would just ride on out and be happy with the results that he had there. Pretty much with the results that he had there, in this particular fight here with Ahmed Elbiali, getting the win and, finishing his career 32-5-1. Of course, I was, talking about the titles that he won at the light heavyweight division, getting that big win against Chad Dawson there. But also, suffering losses to Bernard Hopkins and to Sergey Kovalev. So, it was pretty much was a, fairly good career for Jean Pascal there in the light heavyweight division. And I would say that he was, he was pretty happy with his result there and what he had done over the course of his professional career. On the flip side, you have, Ahmed Elbiali, who ended up losing his first professional fight. I guess maybe, he was, brought up, in hindsight, of course, people would probably say he was, brought up a little bit too quickly to go up against somebody with the experience level or, big fight experience that Jean Pascal had. But it looked like they were trying to, see if, Ahmed Elbiali pretty much had the goods or not. And usually, in this particular instance, you're not going to necessarily know if he's the goodest or not, unless if you, put him in there with against known fighters or popular fighters to try to get, or to raise your profile. You got to have, something on your boxing resume or a boxing curriculum vitae, so to speak, to, get the overall buzz of boxing fans. And so, by having Jean Pascal matched up against you as Ahmed Elbiali, if you were able to get the win, say, hey, this guy was able to, defeat Jean Pascal, who was a former world champion. So, maybe we'll see what he was going to be able to do, in the light heavyweight division or whatever. But, Ahmed Elbiali was floating around that light heavyweight / cruiserweight division over the course of his young career there, being around, 174 to 176 pounds. But, with this particular fight against Jean Pascal, he was just, open to a lot of the counters that Jean Pascal was throwing at him. And, as a result, that ended up affecting him real bad. And he ended up, losing this fight by TKO. So, once again, Ahmed Elbiali ends up losing the main event fight that was at Hialeah Park Racing and Casino in Hialeah, Florida, there by TKO to Jean Pascal. So Ahmed Elbiali losing to Jean Pascal by TKO in the 6th round. Right. Now, before that fight between Elbiali and Jean Pascal, I wanted to get to what was the co-feature in this particular bout fight card. And that was a heavyweight fight that happened between Luis Ortiz and Daniel Martz. Yep, that's right. Luis Ortiz was on this fight card against Daniel Martz. Ortiz, of course, undefeated at 27-0 against Daniel Martz. Daniel Martz having a record of 16-5-1 coming into this particular fight. most of those fights that he lost via split decision in 2013. He fought Joseph Parker in 2015 in New Zealand. Ended up getting blown out in one round by Joseph Parker in 2015. He was KO'd by Alexis Santos in his fight after the Parker fight. He ended up getting knocked out earlier this year by Brian Jennings, and had another fight actually less than a month earlier against a Tim Washington, which is very interesting to me, that Daniel Martz was able to have a fight on November 17th and then turn right around and have this fight here against Luis Ortiz on December 8th. But it ended up happening here in the, basically here in the casino in Hialeah, Florida. Luis Ortiz, with this actually being his first fight in 12 months, was able to step in the ring, and he was Ortiz just basically was working out his kinks, so to speak, against Daniel Martz, who was there as a tall fighter, basically standing right there in front of Luis Ortiz. And Ortiz was basically, he was working his output by punching to the body, working the body early and often in round one. And it looked like he was able to score a knockdown in round one, but that knockdown in round one seemed like they waived that count in round one or whatever. But Ortiz already had the big advantage after round one, and then round two, he tried to continue that body attack, and once he, continued that body attack, he was strategizing to do something there, and he ended up throwing a right hand that hit square into Daniel Martz's face, and that pretty much knocked Daniel Martz down, kind of face first, and he ended up being knocked out. So Luis Ortiz ended up getting the KO victory over Daniel Martz, and moving to 28-0-0 with his 24th knockout. Before I go forward with this talk in reference to Luis Ortiz's win over Daniel Martz, I just wanted to add in a caller to the board. Area code 202. What's going on with you?
What's up, James? It's World Rank, man. I just want to make a quick statement. I know you ain't getting to the main fights yet, but man, it's just a sad state of affairs where we can't give guys credit for winning the fight based on race, style, or whatever the case is. Man, I just think too many people out here are so caught up in style and race. We can't give Andre Ward credit for beating Kovalev because we hate Ward's style. And this is not just me speaking, this is just stuff that I see in general. We can't give Lomo his due because Rigo was quote unquote too small or this and that. I mean, I'm picking guys based on, I'm gonna pick Lomo based on that he's white and I'm white, or I'm picking Rigo because he's dark skinned or he's Cuban. I mean, I just don't get it, man. I wish boxing, I know, race is part of the sport. I know style is part of the sport, but we should be able to give these guys credit for for the wins and look beyond our biases.
All right. Yeah, that's a good little opening statement there in reference to, what is, basically, happened, I guess, over the course of the weekend and, over the, course of history in the sport of boxing, so to speak, there. And we'll be sure to revisit that in, another segment here on the show. But, yeah, like was saying here in this first segment, I was, going over the two major fights that were on Premier Boxing Champions on Fox Sports 1 in Hialeah, Florida. First, I went over the main event as you had Elbiali and John Pascal fighting there with Pascal getting that TKO win. And I was just talking about Luis Ortiz fighting Daniel Martz and getting that second round KO. So I just got to the point where Ortiz knocked out Martz, but I haven't really gone over what happened after that as of yet. So World Rank, if you were able to catch that Premier Boxing Champion telecast, were you able to see that Ahmed Elbiali John Pascal match?
Yeah, so I'm going to gloat a little bit about some of the fights that I picked that you're going to get into later. But this one was an idiot pick of mine. I thought, not that Elbiali was the good, I clearly got this wrong. So even though I may gloat later on about a pick that I made, I don't know more or less than anyone else on here. So I just want to make that clear because even in social media, I had commented and tweeted Terrell. Shout out to Terrell. He probably calls in later about Elbiali. And I even mentioned him last week because I was really not necessarily high on him, but I just thought Pascal was so done that this was kind of going to be Elbiali's jump off fight basically. And I was sadly mistaken. I was wrong. Pascal, I guess his motivation. I don't know. I saw this on social media. Some people said that this was his last fight. I don't know if that to be true or not. Maybe you could talk more about that. But whatever it was, he had more fire in him. He had just more fire in him. I think Elbiali probably overlooked him like I did his defense. Elbiali, I didn't think his defense was that bad. But again, when you're fighting lower opposition, you tend to look better than what you really are. So I'm kind of ashamed that I made that pick. Hopefully, Elbiali may learn from this fight going forward. For Pascal, I think this is a good crowning of his career, to go out like that on his own terms and especially with a win. So it's a good look for Pascal to end like that. I'm proud when a veteran fighter can go out with a W and kind of look good, get a stoppage. So it was a good fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight there between Elbiali and John Pascal. The commentary in that particular or during that particular fight, it was saying that John Pascal kind of came in there, kind of like being like a spoiler of sorts, saying that he may have tried to be similar to where Bernard Hopkins was facing him in that second fight that they had against each other, where Bernard Hopkins was the teacher and John Pascal was a student, and then here it was John Pascal as a student and Ahmed Elbiali as the teacher right there. As looked like Pascal was studying what Elbiali was doing, seeing what openings Elbiali had, and then worked off of those. Basically worked off of those openings in order to throw the counters and make Elbiali pay. And so that ended up being Elbiali's downfall in this particular fight against Jean Pascal. I think you were on hold for a little while, so I think you probably heard me saying that with Elbiali, I think they tried to, have Pascal on there as a notable guy on Elbiali's resume to try to build his build his profile up, but it ended up backfiring on him.
You're absolutely right. When I first saw the fight was made, maybe a couple of months ago, like I said, I got on social media and I was like, man, this is Elbiali's fight. Pascal's done. Sometimes you can see a prospect before, and sometimes they get matched up too quickly. Elbiali, I've seen him a couple of times on PBC. He didn't really have a filter fight. So when I looked through the light heavyweight division, there was no gatekeeper that he had fought yet. He fought a lot of guys that, just run-of-the-mill guys. He didn't. Before you get to that world level, you got to have like a gatekeeper fight or something to that. Maybe he thought Pascal was the gatekeeper, and I think his team probably thought that as well. Little did we know that Pascal still had something left in him. So again, it's a learning experience for him. Hopefully he comes back. But I don't really, in his future, I don't really, unless he gets that defense fixed, I don't really see a future on the high echelon light heavyweight division with all those offensively gifted fighters.
Yeah, no doubt there. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen here for Ahmed Elbiali after this loss. I'm not necessarily sure if he was seriously hurt, but at least the doctors came in, stepped in to stop the fight in that particular case, so that Elbiali wouldn't be seriously hurt and take any serious damage in that particular fight. So he would be prepared for future fights there. So at least the doctors stepped in at a good time for the stoppage of that particular fight. Now, going into the Ortiz fight with Daniel Martz, of course, I said that, Ortiz ended up knocking out Daniel Martz in the second round. One of the things that, I didn't mention in reference to this particular fight was that there was a certain person ringside watching this fight between Luis Ortiz and Daniel Martz. And that person was the WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder. And he ended up stepping forward and became a commentator for the fight between Luis Ortiz and Daniel Martz. And he was talking during the fight about, Daniel Martz, maybe, they matched Luis Ortiz up with Daniel Martz, saying that, he's a taller guy, that they're trying to compare Daniel Martz to me height-wise or anything like that, but nobody compares to me, Deontay Wilder, or anything like that. But in the second round, on the instant that Luis Ortiz got the second round knockout, he went, he looked straight to the commentator's box, looked right at Wilder and basically said, "What's up? I want you. I want to fight you. Ready?" And Deontay Wilder stood up and had his arms held up and was saying, "What's up?" And you had the post-fight commentary there for PBC on FS1, and it was Deontay Wilder ended up stepping inside the ring there, and there was a little back and forth between those two. So I'm gonna kind of see if I could play the 3-minute segment here real quick, and then have a few comments coming after that. So here we go with that little segment. Let me see if this will work right here.
Performance. Clearly, you have some words with Wilder. You want him next.
And getting in the ring now.
Quieres pelear con Wilder.
He's here. I want to fight you.
You want to fight me?
Yeah.
When you want to fight me?
When? Tomorrow.
When you ready? When are you ready?
No, I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm ready for you.
All right, stay by the phone, baby. Stay by the phone. I've been wanting to. You messed this opportunity up. I blessed you with the opportunity the first time.
Hey, you know they happy.
I blessed you with the opportunity the first time.
Hey,
what did you do? What did you do?
You guys?
So you know what? I'm going to bless you again.
Let's see. We'll see when this comes up. Clearly, you guys are ready to fight. Deontay, Luis, great job tonight. Ray, back to you.
Well, they are certainly ready to do battle.
Yeah, he put him down.
Yeah, Luis Ortiz and Deontay Wilder. Look at that. What a matchup that'll be here in potentially next year.
He says that Joshua clearly doesn't want to fight you. He doesn't want to fight him. Let's give the world this fight and make it happen.
Most definitely. You know, if you're ready and you say you're ready, because I was ready for the first time. I understand that blood pressure pills and stuff like that, but you know what? This is a new day for you. Thank God that he blessed you again. And you know what? Because he blessed you, I'm going to bless you too. Because I think you're one of the best, and I wanted to prove that I am the best. So for the best to prove that they are the best must fight each other. So I'm going to bless you again with the second opportunity. So stay by your phone, Luis Ortiz. I'm coming for you. Be ready. Be ready. I don't want no excuses. I don't want no excuses.
Que no hay excusa. Grítale al mundo, que el mundo sabe, el mundo, Miami, el mundo entero, que tú vas a firmar la pelea para pelear tú y yo.
There'll be no excuses. Tell the world, Miami, God included, that you're going to sign the fight, take the fight, and make the fight.
I'm always a man of my word. There's nothing I never said that I haven't did. Luis Ortiz, you will have the fight. I will bless you again. And this time, no excuses. No excuses. I'm a not.
Miami, él quiere pelear. Vamos a darle la pelea. Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. He said, let's do it.
Hey, make sure you train hard because I'm coming to whoop your ass. I promise.
Oye, motherfucker, you bitch.
All right, and we apologize for the language. We apologize for the language that was used, but my goodness.
Well, yeah, I'm not necessarily sure if everything was going through on that. But basically that verbal jab between Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz, and Deontay Wilder basically said that he was going to bless Luis Ortiz with the opportunity a second time or whatever it is, and that you better be prepared because I'm going to whip your ass or whatever it is, or something like that. And then Luis Ortiz, excuse the language, man, and he said, "Yo, motherfucker, you a beast," and basically called it to him to his face. That's basically how that confrontation there ended there. But thing is that that whole thing was handled very bad by Fox Sports 1. I think it was handled bad, I would say, by Deontay Wilder to me. But I'll continue on it on his side in a bit. But World Rank, what did you think about the verbal confrontation between Luis Ortiz and Deontay Wilder?
I didn't think much of it. Wilder, he does that. He did that with Fury. He did that, I think, even with Johnson. To me, you're both talking. That doesn't really matter to me. I said last week that I didn't think that this fight had a chance of happening. I hope it proves me wrong. I hope it does happen. It kind of changed my mind to the fact that it may happen. last week I didn't think it had any chance of happening. So, I mean, that's what Wilder does. He gets up there. He's a good talker. You know, he's a good WWE trash talker. I mean, it did what it intended to do, but I didn't take anything away from it.
Well, I mean, you do bring up a point there in reference to Deontay Wilder, in reference like him talking a lot. That's what he continues to do over the course of his career since he's won the WBC heavyweight title. But like I've said in the past couple of weeks, it's one thing to talk about something, but it's another thing to actually make things happen. And with Wilder, he has kind of talked a lot, but he hasn't, made things happen. Behind the scenes, or he hasn't like really pushed to, get fights like these. You have the instance, like you were saying, with him and Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury stepped up into the ring, after Deontay Wilder got the knockout win over Ortiz-Daniel at the Barclays Center January of last year. You also had, other occasions where, he stepped up and talked to, guys like, my boy Shannon Briggs, and basically was, talking out of himself. With against Shannon Briggs. You had the case in April of this year where he was able to go to the UK for that Anthony Joshua-Vladimir Klitschko fight, and he was kind of like part of the commentary team for Showtime or something like that, but he didn't necessarily, go into the ring or step to Anthony Joshua after that fight. But, leading up to the fight, I think it was like before the fight or something like that, he was talking back and forth with Tony Bellew there. But, Tony Bellew, really isn't somebody that Deontay Wilder should be really, stepping to at that point. And then, like I was saying, I mean, he's talking about fighting Anthony Joshua, but he wasn't, really going to, he hasn't done anything in reference to making that fight happen until really recently. And so now, with this whole thing with Luis Ortiz, he was saying that, hey, he said he wanted to fight Luis Ortiz in November, that he gave, step-aside money to Berman Severn in order to fight Luis Ortiz, but then they have this press conference where he says, hey Luis, I hope you don't get caught with anything leading up to this. And then days later, they talk about Luis Ortiz being tested positive for 2 substances that were in blood pressure pills, which, at the time wasn't really necessarily significant. And this was said by, many people that were, dealing with, drug testing or anti-doping or whatever it was. But, even with that, Luis Ortiz ended up being scrapped from that match with Deontay Wilder. And then Deontay Wilder, like I said, ended up fighting Berman Severn. But my thing was with the WBC is it's strange to me how the WBC had that fight scrapped, and then Luis Ortiz was still able to fight a month later. But in other cases where people were tested positive for, for drugs or whatever it is, they were able to excuse them and have them be able to fight for, that particular fight. I often point Francisco Vargas, and I often point to Luis Neri. Francisco Vargas had a title, ended up being tested positive. They were still, able to make the ruling. WBC was able to still make the ruling for Francisco Vargas to fight Orlando Salido. And with Luis Neri, he got tested positive after winning the WBC belt. And the WBC said for Luis Neri to keep that title. But here, in this case, with Deontay Wilder, they ended up not having that fight with Luis Ortiz. And this is like the second instance where this has happened, where someone tests positive in a potential fight with Deontay Wilder, and the WBC doesn't suspend them, but Deontay Wilder ends up carrying and going forward, holding the WBC title. And I think, and I was hoping one of our callers would be in right now, but this is kind of like going to my theory about Deontay Wilder having the path of least resistance to Anthony Joshua and the big money fight between him and Anthony Joshua. They're trying to see if they can make that fight happen for 2018, and I'm seeing that it's going to be closer and closer for that fight to happen pretty much by the summer of 2018, especially now with the news coming in or rolling in that Anthony Joshua is planning to fight Joseph Parker on March 31st in Cardiff, Wales. So those reports have been floating out on ESPN and Boxing Scene and other UK outlets that happened earlier this morning, and it's starting to float around now, and it may be becoming official over the next couple of days that Joshua versus Parker will happen March 31st, 2018 in Cardiff, Wales. So, in between that, there's got to be somebody for Deontay Wilder to fight, and Luis Ortiz is right there and is available, but I just doubt that Deontay Wilder wants to have that potential fight between him and Anthony Joshua put in danger. So I doubt that, I doubt that he will end up facing Luis Ortiz. He'll probably getting somebody like a Dominic Breazeale to fight next before fighting Anthony Joshua. World Rank, what's your response on that?
Man, I don't disagree with what you're saying. The only part that I kind of have a disagreement is I don't think Wilder is necessarily the person that's saying, don't get me these fights. So I personally think Wilder would fight anybody. I think most fighters would fight anybody. I really don't think if you put Wilder in a room with his team, he's telling people not to give him Ortiz or not to give him this guy or that guy. I do think there are other people, being as though maybe Al Heyman, WBC, whoever, are making sure that he takes the least resistant path to Joshua. I also think, though, that Joshua's team is doing the same thing. I think they avoided Ortiz. Like I said last week, Eddie Hearn signed Ortiz to avoid Joshua. There are things that both sides are doing to make sure that fight is made and, behind the scenes and stuff like that. But it's such a big fight, I can actually see why they're doing it. If it doesn't, let's say Wilder loses or Joshua loses beforehand, I think it would diminish any chance the heavyweight division could be back in the forefront of some type of resurgence in terms of the sport, at least here in the States. So I think there is, like you said, I do agree that there's someone holding them to the least resistance until they face each other, but I'm not totally sure that it's the actual fighter.
I'll get into that as a response at length. I'll get into that in response at length, but I just wanted to add in another caller here. Area code 813. What's going on with you?
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Terrell calling from Tampa. Once again, glad to be part of what's going to be a great show filled with various topics from different weight divisions and different results, and some hot topics going forward, like you guys are addressing right now in regards to the Joshua, Wilder, Ortiz, Parker heavyweight situation. Just watching that unfold piece by piece. and trying to filter through all the bull in between watching that situation unfold as well.
Yeah, and you had World Rank here talking about the situation with Luis Ortiz, Deontay Wilder, and of course the potential super fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. And World Rank was bringing up that people on both sides of Joshua's team and Wilder's team are making actions for that super fight to happen, and not have somebody potentially thwarted. And the guy being brought up is Luis Ortiz. World Rank had talked about Luis Ortiz and his signing when he was signed with Eddie Hearn. But my thing with the Eddie Hearn deal with Ortiz is that Ortiz, basically got a couple of fights while he was under Eddie Hearn, and I know that he had, I think it was like a 3-fight deal with Eddie Hearn. But if it was like a 3-fight deal, and he already had 2 fights already out or done before his 3rd particular fight. Going through the timeline around that particular time, you had Ortiz with those 2 fights that was on November and December of 2016. But in that particular time frame, you had Anthony Joshua defending the IBF title against Eric Molina, and they were already setting up a super fight between Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko. Now, while that fight was being set up, you had Luis Ortiz as the highest-ranked contender for the supposed WBA heavyweight championship. But at that time, you didn't have a WBA super champion because, of course, Tyson Fury was, out of commission there. So the IBF title, of course, was gone. The WBO title was gone. The WBA super title was gone. So you had the WBA super title that wasn't around, and the WBA regular title wasn't around either, because that was basically vacated after the fight that was going down in March. It was March 5th. March 5th, between Lucas Brown. It was Lucas Brown. I think Lucas Brown was there with the title, and that ended up being out in space or whatever it is. From like March until November or whatever it was, not only didn't you have a WBA super champion at heavyweight, you didn't even have a WBA regular champion at heavyweight. And what kind of like gets me about that is that Ortiz was there, and Ortiz was active, and Ortiz was the number 1 contender for either one of those belts. So if the WBA title, the heavyweight title, was vacant at the time, how come the WBA didn't set up a title bout between Ortiz and anybody or the highest ranked contender that was around for it? They ended up waiting until April. They ended up waiting until April to add the WBA super title to a fight between Joshua and Klitschko when neither one of those guys were the WBA champion. So that really to me was a head scratcher. And so after that particular fight and Joshua winning, right? So Joshua is now the IBF champion and the WBA super champion. Now, he was able to have that fight with Klitschko, with a caveat that if he was able to win that fight against Klitschko, his next fight had to be against, at the time, number 1 contender for the IBF championship, Kubrat Pulev. And if he wasn't able to fight Pulev, then he would be stripped of the IBF title. So he ended up making that fight, trying to make that fight happen. Of course, we know Pulev had to pull out with injury, so he couldn't really fight. So with that, he couldn't really defend that WBA Super Championship against Luis Ortiz because he just became the WBA Super Champ. So it's not, to me, it can't necessarily be a ducking of Ortiz like a lot of people want to say when for a good amount of time the WBA itself did not even have any sort of world heavyweight champion for at least 8 months.
Hey,
so
James,
if there was anybody to blame in that case, it would have been the WBA.
James, I got your answer. The WBA chose not to make Luis Ortiz give him a fight because of 2 reasons. The first reason, they wanted in on the money of the Klitschko-Joshua fight. It made more sense for them to make Klitschko-Joshua winner the super champion than to give Ortiz a fight with anybody, Brown, Oquendo, whoever, because that didn't make any money. They wanted to be in the business for the Klitschko job. They wanted to be a part of it. WBC does it all the time, where even Canelo said that he didn't want the title. They still try to get a bogus title. That's what these sanctions have done. So they left it open to be part in the cash in on the Klitschko Joshua. What happened after that was, like you said, the IBF did mandate Pulev, but the WBA also mandatory Ortiz. What Hearn did at that time, because he wasn't signed with Ortiz wasn't signed with him, he signed Ortiz and told the WBA that we will make that fight after we do the IBF mandatory. Once that came about, once Joshua went the IBF route for the Pulev fight or whatever, he signed Ortiz and just gave him a couple of fights and kept telling the public. At that time, he kept telling the public it was going to be either Pulev or Ortiz. After we get rid of our IBF mandatory, we're going to take on Ortiz. What happened though is after he brought Ortiz out and told the IBF, well, give me some time while I figure this IBF thing, Pulev happened to get hurt, which kind of pushed the WBA back more. So what happened was the WBA kind of was forced to kind of make somehow some type of tournament, but Ortiz was never in it. Again, because Hearn had promised the WBA that he would get Joshua. And again, they're in it for the money. So they want the biggest fight, but they also wanted to kind of make it seem like they wasn't waiting for Joshua. So the whole time, again, it goes back to that's why the WBA didn't mandate any of these fights, because they wanted to take advantage of the Klitschko-Joshua fight and also what Eddie Hearn did to try to take Ortiz out of the WBA situation.
Now, okay, I understand the whole thing with the money part for the WBA Super Championship. I understand that. But I think, you were mentioning something about a tournament with the WBA, but the tournament that was with the WBA, actually, they created that tournament at the beginning of 2016. And in that tournament that they had in 2016, what they had planned was they had planned a tournament with 7 fighters there to try to consolidate the WBA championship. Okay, on one side, you had the proposed rematch between Tyson Fury and Vladimir Klitschko. The winner of that fight was supposed to fight the winner of Luis Ortiz and Alexander Ustinov. So that's one side of the tournament. On the other side of the tournament, you had Ruslan Chagayev. Okay, I got the name. Ruslan Chagayev against Lucas Brown. That was the fight that was on March 5th, basically. That was the fight that was basically scheduled for March 5th. The winner of that fight was going to fight Fast Freza Kendo. So you had Brown, Chagayev, and Freza Kendo on one side. Then you had Fury Klitschko and Ortiz Ustinov on the other side. Now, the only thing that happened was the Brown versus Ruslan Chagayev on March 5th there. After that fight, well, actually at the same day of that Brown Chagayev fight, you had Luis Ortiz fighting Tony Thompson, over here in the DC Armory. On the other side, you know, they were trying to make that fight between Ortiz and Usmanov, but contractual issues, money issues, they never really got that fight finalized and done. So that fight never happened. And of course, like I was saying, Klitschko never happened. So that whole side of that WBA tournament got scrapped. And you only had Lucas Brown, Ruslan Chagiev, with Lucas Brown winning the WBA regular quote-unquote title. And then after that, you didn't hear anything else from Lucas Brown. There was no Lucas Brown versus Kendo fight for the WBA regular title. Never happened, never was talked about, nothing. So that whole tournament basically got basically diced to bits. It basically got diced to bits pretty much by, I would say, either halfway through the year or that last time when they tried to make Ortiz versus Usmanov. And after that fight fell through for the last time, that's when Ortiz basically broke away from Golden Boy Promotions and ended up signing with Eddie Hearn. So that goes from the beginning of 2016 all the way down to October 2016. And then after that, that's when Joshua ended up defending that IBF title. You had Joshua Klitschko, and then that ended up having the WBA super title added on to it. So that's why I was saying at the beginning that from March of 2016 up until at least November, you didn't have any WBA World Heavyweight Champion up to that point. There was nothing done in order to make a WBA Heavyweight title fight. And that's why I say that's where you come in and say that, yeah, the WBA tried to take advantage with the money thing with Joshua Klitschko, but at the same token, they could have had a WBA regular title fight happen, and it didn't happen. However, they recently was just something now where the WBA had a regular world championship happen, and they ended up awarding that WBA heavyweight title. And so now that's in the hands of somebody right now, and what they're doing is, you know, with Manuel Char. Manuel Char just won that. And so what was said last week in last week's show by Matthew was that now they're trying to have Manuel Char fight Freza Kendo as soon as possible so that they could try to get Kendo out the way, because Kendo's been trying to get that title fight for years now. And he's been inactive for at least 3 years, but he's been going back and forth with the WBA. That's pretty much the whole situation with that. That was kind of long-winded. I had somebody here from the 321 on the line. I wanted to get them on the line or get them on the line. 321, what's going on with you?
Hey, what's going on, JR? It's Jeff Cotto. What's going on, fellas?
Jay Cotto, come back to boxing. What's going on?
Chilling, my brother. What's going on, man? How'd you enjoy that fight yesterday?
Pretty much I haven't necessarily gone through that particular fight there at the Madison Square Garden fight yet. So we're going to get into that at length because that thing really got me. But up to this point, I pretty much talked about the Friday card that was on FS1 that included Luis Ortiz, and of course that whole Luis Ortiz Deontay Wilder confrontation and the the situation with Luis Ortiz. And remember, like I said, I was like, it's kind of strange that Luis Ortiz was taken out of a fight with Deontay Wilder, but is able to fight 1 month later in Hialeah.
Exactly. See, this is why I say that when every time Deontay Wilder says he failed 2 drug tests, no, he only failed 1. WBC made it perfectly clear in their statement that he was basically proven right, that he was just taking blood pressure medications. So he didn't fail any drug test. There was no penalization whatsoever coming from the WBC. Now the WBA, they jumped the gun. Also, it was also said from an article that I had, I had also reported, did a video on as well, that the WBA was asked by Eddie Hearn to actually suspend Ortiz, you know what I'm saying? And the WBA basically showing favor for doing that because they went ahead and they suspended They suspended him. So it just goes to the point that the WBA needs to really take a second look at this and understand that if the WBC went ahead and did whatever the fuck they did, but at the same time they're proving this man innocent as to, okay, we made the mistake, which is basically what was said in their statement, then that's what they need to do. They need to treat it as a damn mistake and promise this man a fight. I would say somewhere between February, March, you know what I mean? But Deontay Wilder does have to see King Kong Ortiz. I'm happy that King Kong Ortiz called him out. I'm not sure. I'm not biased in any way. You know that. I'm just saying. And you guys can rewind this if you like to, if you got it on your DVRs or anything. But when King Kong called, was calling him out as to Wilder was very hesitant. And King Kong had to call him up a couple of times. And every time he came up, I don't know, you might want to call it conspiracy, but it won't be called a conspiracy unless you guys do your research. The research I did was I just kept pressing rewind because I just could not believe on how they cut the mic off on the translator when he was talking about the incident as to what happened. I couldn't fucking believe the way they just kept talking over Wilder as well. It was very, very bad. I mean, if that was supposed to be a call out, that was done like terribly. But at the same time, at least we got to hear King Kong Ortiz call him a bitch and a motherfucker, which is cool. It was cool, but that fight has to come. It has to show. And I'm excited about it, but I'm not going to put my hopes up too high unless these guys are actually in the ring receiving fight instructions. I don't even care about contracts being inked anymore because by the time, we've seen pullouts and shit, you know what I mean? So until they're receiving fight instructions is exactly when I'll be putting my hands together and standing up for this fight.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is that I feel the same way, but I seriously doubt that a Wilder Ortiz fight will happen. I think that Wilder's team is doing the path of least resistance to the big money fight with Anthony Joshua. And by doing that, they'll have to nullify pretty much any type of thing that would be a serious threat to that. And Luis Ortiz is a threat to that particular super fight happening. And me, like last week, I was saying that, Wilder and his team, Heyman, Lou DiBella, JD's, you have Shelley Finkel, all of them, I seriously feel that they are in to have the path of least resistance to Anthony Joshua, and they also, have the WBC along there with it. And the reason why I say they have the WBC along there with it is because if you read or listen to the comments from Mauricio Suleiman in reference to this whole thing with the WBC, he's talking about trying to make the Wilder-Joshua fight happen as soon as possible, and that if it doesn't happen in 2018, it's a shame for anyone that's trying to block that fight. But you have not seen or read anything about Mauricio Suleiman saying, hey, we were supposed to have Wilder versus Ortiz on November 4th, but it didn't end up happening. Let's try to get that fight made again. We have not seen or read Mauricio Suleiman say anything of that sort. And by that to me says that they want that path of least resistance to the big money fight with Anthony Joshua. And that's what I'm going with. I think we have another caller in here. I think we have another guy here that's been a caller before. Maybe not, but I got an area code 646. What's going on with you?
Yeah, I was just listening to that bullshit y'all was kicking about Deontay Wilder as usual, so I had to call in real quick. Y'all already know what it is, man. It's like y'all sent a bat signal for me or something, man.
What's up, my brother? What's going on, kid?
Listen, we know what's going to happen. Wilder's he's gonna fight Luis Ortiz. That's gonna happen. It's guaranteed to happen. It's gonna happen in the first quarter of the year. After he fights Ortiz, he's probably gonna end up fighting, I want to say, either Dillian White or Dominic Breazeale. Then in the third quarter of the year, he's gonna end up fighting Anthony Joshua. That's the way it's gonna go. That's the way it has to go.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good.
Talk that you guys are having, man. It's like you guys you guys hate Deontay Wilder so much.
Nah, it ain't that. You know what it is? You know what it is with me? You know what it is with me with Wilder? The thing with me with Wilder is, my whole thing is, okay, you had a chance to fight Klitschko a while back, right? Okay, so now you don't get a chance. Hold on, let me finish.
No, he didn't.
Hold on, let me finish. You don't, so you skip that chance or whatever. Okay, fine. It's also known that he put you on your ass sparring. Okay, whatever. But then at the same time, you're downing the man who fought Klitschko, who, you know what I'm saying? And then it's like, okay, he's old. So when you fight King Kong's gonna be about the same age. You find an old nigga too. You feel me? So it's like, this has to be done regardless. That's one. Two, the race cards that he's pushing and all that shit. It's just a lot of things that Wilder's doing. You know what I mean? That just actually unattracted me. Because, like I said, I used to report on Wilder a lot, my brother. I used to love Wilder, but the race baiting and him kicking and screaming and shit and thinking that think about this. He wants a fight, right? He wants him to not fight Parker, not to fight anyone else, just go straight to him. But by the time he does that and inks that contract, they're going to strip him. You know what I'm saying? They're going to strip him because he got obligations. The guy's walking around with 3 titles. Now, the best thing for Wilder to do for me, you know what I'm saying, for me, regardless, as the fan that I used to be, what I want Wilder to do is exactly what you said. Is he needs a Dillian White for a measuring stick and to warm up as well. And as well, he needs to take on other good, credible names, and he's good. You know what I mean? He's just got to stop kicking and screaming. That is all that I need from Deontay Wilder to stop doing. Stop bitching, train, take Dillian White, take that money, take $3-5 million, whatever it is, take that high so that way you put your worth across the table so that way when it comes negotiation time, you could get your 40-60 or the 50-50 you asking for. But honestly, do you think he's worth 50-50, my brother?
If they're fighting in the UK, obviously it's not a 50-50 fight. I think he should be more in line with what Golovkin got against Canelo.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, whatever Anthony Joshua makes of this fight, he'll make double or triple that fight in Deontay Wilder. There's so much buzz for that fight, and I think people are just underestimating the revenue that Deontay Wilder has the potential to generate. Now you're talking about he should take $3 to $5 million to fight Dillian White. Are they going to fight in the U.S. or are they going to fight in the UK? Because if they're going to fight in the UK, then Wilder deserves a whole hell of a lot more than $3 to $5 million. Because I guarantee you that fight in the UK would generate at least $60 to $70 million.
Right.
So if they're gonna fight in the U.S., okay, $3 to $5 million, that's fine, because the U.S. doesn't have the huge stadiums where you could charge $20-$30 a ticket and still sell 70,000 tickets. It's not like that here. So if they're gonna fight in the U.S., $3 to $5 million is fine to fight Dillian White. If they're gonna fight in the UK, then Deontay Wilder is exactly right when he says he deserves more than what Matchroom is offering, and I don't get why people don't see that.
Because he first it was it ain't about money, right? So they offered him $3 million for Dillian White. Then he was like, nah, I'm looking for unification when he wasn't even speaking about unification. 8 months ago, he wasn't talking unification. This is what baffles us hardcore boxing fans with him, is that you're giving us too many lanes, and we're trying to believe you on one lane, but then you go off and you switch off on us with another one. So what is it? It's not. You can't say it's not about money and then bitch about, I'm only getting $3 million. But I'm saying though, you feel what I'm saying? These guys hold themselves up to a standard. We have to hold them up to that standard. That goes with any fighter, even my fighter. You know what I'm saying? In this era, which I think is the best number one pound for pound, which is Terrence Crawford. If he was to switch up on some shit like that as well, like I would have to get him too. You know, look at this Pacquiao shit with this hybrid boxing shit. I don't want fucking Pacquiao doing what Mayweather did. What the fuck for? You feel what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, it is what it is. I understand the money bit and all that, but you got to stay on one lane. So if it's all about unification, then goddamn it, stay on that. Talk only about unification. You know what I mean? Let the money scene be behind the scenes. If you're going to bring anything out in front of us fight fans, we don't even want to fucking hear about money. Let's just get this fucking unification going. That's just, you know,
so
that's
let me
just
ask you a question.
All right. Hey, Matt, you may have a little response to that, but I was going to come back to what you were saying in reference to the layout for Wilder for 2018. But World Ranker Terrell, y'all got something to say about, you know, the plans for 2018 in the heavyweight scene?
I go first. I don't really care about the money aspect, like Big Cotto said. Like that doesn't mean nothing to me. So he can get 50-50, he can get 40-60. I don't care what he gets. He just needs to get in the fight and fight somebody that's real. It ain't no hate over here. I don't hate Wilder. Everything I'm speaking is about resume, about fact. So I don't care about his money. I don't care about none of that. He needs to get in there and face somebody, and that just is what it is. I don't care why the fight's not made. I don't care about none of that. Fight somebody.
Yep, hear that. I hear that.
All right, Terrell, you got something? Oh, I think he's just listening in the background here for a little bit. But yeah, in reference to Matthew, I wanted you to like go through the whole thing again. Like you saying that for 2018 that Wilder should fight White first, and then somebody else, and then Joshua in the fall, right?
No, he's gonna fight Ortiz first. That's gonna be his next
Ortiz
fight.
first,
Yeah,
then Dylan
first.
White,
and then
Joshua.
Fight Dillian White or Dominic Brazil, either or. He's gonna fight either or, whichever deal could be made between White and Brazil. He's gonna fight either one of them during the beginning of the summer, and then in the fall, that's where the Joshua fight is gonna come in.
All right. I almost can't go through with this without laughing, but hey, I gotta.
Remember where you heard it first.
I still want to go with my theory of the path of least resistance. Wow.
Yeah.
And what I say with that is this, is that you have this thing here with Anthony Joshua fighting Joseph Parker that's planned for March 31st in Cardiff, Wales. Those reports were coming out, earlier this morning, and so we're going to see, over the next day or two if, that's going to be confirmed, the contract stipulations have been agreed to and everything like that. So if that is going to be the case and Joshua and Parker are fighting on March 31st, Joshua could get past Parker and have three of the belts, three of the major belts. So after that, there really isn't, much, for him to do because he's already taken care of one mandatory with the IBF. The WBA, is the WBA, so they're screwed themselves. And then the WBO title that he won, Parker has already defended it against the mandatory. So it's basically a year that has to go through for that mandatory to be obligated. So that would leave him free to fight the WBC champion Deontay Wilder in his next fight. So with that concept, being put in place, that would leave Deontay Wilder with time for just one fight for me. And with it being just one fight and him already obligating to the mandatory by defeating Bermane Stiverne on November 4th, he doesn't necessarily have to fight Dylan White because Dylan White is the mandatory for the WBC now. And as the WBC champion, he doesn't have to obligate to the mandatory until November 4th of next year. So he doesn't have to fight Dillian Whyte. He could choose to fight Dillian Whyte, but he doesn't have to. And with that being said,
Dillian Whyte is not mandatory for the WBC. Brazil,
he's the number one ranked contender.
Yeah, but Brazil is the mandatory. Brazil had the fight on the undercard to determine the mandatory for Wilder.
Yeah, maybe because I don't know how that, I don't know how what the WBC is doing in reference to that situation. But
you're both correct.
To me, I thought
you're both correct.
I mean,
the WBC is.
My thing is that you have Dillian Whyte currently there at number 1, Dominic Vasyl there at number 2, and Luis Ortiz there at number 3. I'm not sure if they've had updated rankings yet because I'm looking at the rankings through Fight News, and Fight News has Miroslav at number 5, and of course Miroslav lost on November 11th to Jarrell Miller. So I have to see where Jarrell Miller would be placed in those rankings and where Miroslav falls. But for right now, I see Dillian Whyte number 1, Dominic Vasyl number 2. So if Dillian Whyte's number 1, then Deontay Wilder doesn't necessarily have to fight Dillian Whyte there at number 1 because he already beat the guy that was there at number 1 in Berman Severn. So that's why I say he can fight Dillian Whyte, but he doesn't have to. And since he doesn't have to, he could choose to fight Dominic Vasyl and have a defense against Dominic Vasyl here in the States or wherever. And then after he beats Dominic Vasyl, he would be clear for that super fight with Anthony Joshua that I feel would happen in the summer months of 2018. And the reason why I say the summer months of 2018 is because that leaves it open for as many people as possible to be free in order to watch that fight. If you have it in the fall, it'll be football season or, basketball season or whatever it is, where people aren't necessarily going to bring their full attention to that particular fight. If you put it in the summer months, you have a better chance.
It depends if the NFL is still kneeling. You know what I'm saying?
Who knows what happens with all that? But I just still. But even with the NFL, this thing would be on either a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday evening, and that's college football. And there's one thing for me that I would say: if it isn't boxing, that's my sport. It's college football, that's my sport. Those things have me locked in the house or whatever it is on Saturday night, Saturday afternoon. Anything else I could really care less about. But college football and boxing, that's my joint. So with that being said, you're not going to have, to me, I don't feel that you're going to have a heavyweight championship unification fight between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, happen in the fall months unless it would be here in the States. And I feel that it's going to be in the UK because that's where the most, to me, overall, that's where the most money could be made is over in the UK. If you put it in Vegas, I don't think you will get the amount of, I don't think you will get that same gate or the same interest or whatever it is in the U.S. and worldwide compared to if you have it in the UK. I just feel it's not at that point yet here in the States. I kind of brought this up recently, and I said in reference to a UK versus a U.S. person for the heavyweight title, we have to go back to Lewis Tyson. But that's Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. Yep. Neither one of these guys are close to that popularity. So, yeah, you could have it in the U.S. if you have somebody in the U.S. that has that popularity that Mike Tyson had. Lennox Lewis, yeah, he kind of has that popularity, but actually with Lennox Lewis, he actually had most of his fights when he had the title over in the U.S. He only had a few fights overseas or in the U.K. So to me, with Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, Joshua has more of a worldwide appeal than Deontay Wilder does. And actually, I checked Google Trends. You could go ahead and check Google Trends. Go on there and then type in Anthony Joshua and then type in Deontay Wilder and make a comparison. Anthony Joshua gets more impressions than Deontay Wilder pretty much on every country in the world that you could make a comparison with, including the United States. And so with that being said, I just don't feel that you could have a Joshua Wilder fight unless if it's in the summer months for it to be as big as it could possibly be. And I ain't even getting into this.
You know, the UK, they take breaks during the summer for their boxing, though, so they don't have many fights during June through August. So if you look at their schedule, a lot of times the UK they don't have fights in the summer. They call that I forgot what they call it, but if you look at their schedule, very rarely do they have fights during the summertime.
Hold on. And I thought it was going to be on BoxRec here real quick, but the thing is, they tripping as far as like the login thing right now. But what I was going to reference in reference for the UK, I'm looking at it. Oh, okay. So if it was like in the fall over in the UK, then maybe it would be early fall. Because what I was looking at was the fight between Gennady Golovkin and Kell Brook. But that fight was on September 10th of last year. So that was just about like going to the end of the summer into the beginning of the fall. So unless they like had something like maybe July, August, I would have to, look around to see if they had like a super fights available around that time. But that is that. Pretty much like have 30 minutes in the live show, and I was gonna get to the next segment. But is there like any more comments here before I like get into the next segment?
No, I'm good.
All right, cool. All right, since we got like about 30 more minutes left in the live show, if you want to get in on the Boxing Talk, 347-237-5539. Press 1 key to get on queue and be able to talk live on the show. I was going to go with the fight card in England, but I'm going to push that back and have the fight card that was in New York City placed first. And so, with that, what I'm going to do is just go through all of that, and we're going to, get into the main event that was at the theater at Madison Square Garden, as you had Guillermo Rigondeaux going up against Vasyl Lomachenko for the WBO World Super Featherweight title. Rigondeaux coming in there as the Super Bantamweight champion, having the IBO Super Bantamweight champion and the WBA Super title as Super Bantamweight, coming up 2 divisions to fight Vasyl Lomachenko, who is defending the WBO Super Featherweight title. Of course, we all know about the amateur backgrounds of both fighters and everything like that, so there wasn't really much to go on for that. It was a highly anticipated match for a lot of boxing purists and things like that. And it was a fight, basically I would say, it was going to look like a tactical fight between those two, but Vasyl Lomachenko ended up getting the upper hand in this fight. In round 6, you had Guillermo Rigondeaux losing a point for holding. And then at the end of round 6, there was indication that a hand injury was suffered by Guillermo Rigondeaux. So the corner of Rigondeaux ended up stopping the fight. So Vasyl Lomachenko gets the win and retains the WBO Super Featherweight title. They're moving to 10 wins and 1 loss, while Guillermo Rigondeaux falls to 17-1. I just wanted to have that quick analysis, and I am reserving my comments in reference to the fight for a good little while. I want the panel to have their thoughts about what's going on before I say what I say. So, with that, I'm going to see if I could get this in order. I'm going to have Jay go first, then Matthew, then World Rank, and then see if I can get Terrell back on before I get my comments. So, Jay, start it off.
All right. Well, I had gone. I always go with a theory, which already has been proven, that if you're only going to paper chase in this game of boxing and not be competitive, what happens is that you basically tarnish your pedigree. All right. This is what happened with Rigondeaux. He was doing very well in Macau, China. They dropped him because he was bitching about money and shit like that. This was at the Al Heyman stages where he was giving out handouts and shit. He thought he was going to get one, went to Rock Nation. They shelved him. Okay. So now he goes up against an elite fighter in Lomachenko, who only back then in 9 fights did very well. Has a questionable loss to Salido, questionable on Salido's behalf and the judging. A lot of people feel that Lomachenko won. Okay, it is what it is. It happened. He's got a loss. Now the man comes in. Basically, Nick Walters didn't come back out in that fight. Also because, and let's not forget, Nick Walters was very inactive. Came back, took this fight. Okay, no problem. Same thing here with Rigondeaux. Now, Rigondeaux's problem here was that, he wasn't prepared. He wasn't prepared. His inactivity is exactly what fucked him up in this fight. Okay, we can talk movement. We can talk he didn't train properly. We can talk whatever we want. But when you're off almost a year and a half, paper chasing, trying to get fucking fights, and you can't get fights and you don't keep busy, then your last tune-up was a questionable disqualification. I mean, it's to a point that what did people that were following Rigo expect? That this guy was going to do a fucking donaire display and shit? It wasn't going to happen, especially against Lomachenko. Lomachenko had learned all his mistakes from the Salido fight, and he showed it well, yesterday. And, we can't take nothing away from Rigondeaux's pedigree. Rigondeaux is nice. The thing is just his layoff is exactly what tarnished him. He's got a choice now. He can start going for bigger names, staying at that weight class, filling in, which is where he fucking belongs, or he can go back down and continue to do the fuckery he was doing. But congratulations, Lomachenko, and that's really all I have to say.
All right, next up is Matt.
I don't really have much to say, man. It was just a disgrace what I saw last night out of Rigo. Like, I don't really have any words, man. You could just skip right over me, man. I just can't believe what I saw last night.
All right, I think you'll have something to say after I get my comments in. Trust me on that. But World Rank, you next.
I'm glad this fight can happen because it can shut people's mouths up like Matt. So give me some credit because I'm the only one that picked Lomachenko last week. Everybody was picking Rigo. And my point was, Matt, that's a shock when you said last week about Wilder that I had to shut my mouth. So you shut your mouth down for picking Rigo. I mean, like I said last week, I didn't see how he can get inside. I said I don't know what stuff. If he fought on the outside, there was no way he was going to be able to beat Lomachenko. I didn't think he had the style or the desire to want to get in the inside, so I didn't think he was going to fight that style. He didn't. And like I said, if Gary Russell couldn't touch Lomo, I don't think Rigo can because of his size. His size clearly played a decision in me picking him. I just didn't think he was big enough. I didn't think he could be what he needed to be at that weight. The weight was clearly a disadvantage, but all credit to Lomo. He did what I expected him to do, go out there and just dominate based on size and skill. Again, like Jay Cotto said, we can't take nothing away from Rigo for his skill, what he did at the lower weight, but he was just, took on something to attack that was just too big for him. So I give him all the credit.
All right. Next up is Terrell. If you're able to get back on and talk about this fight.
Yeah, I tell you what, like I said, I'm just disappointed in this fight. Somehow I had some high hopes for Rigondeaux in regards to him showing a better performance, a better account of himself, despite the fact that he's going up 2 weight divisions. And yes, that does matter. Like I said, just some time ago when Broner jumped over from 135 to 147 to Paul Malignaggi, everyone's like, what in the hell is he doing? He's fighting more than he can chew. And I think many people out here think that he probably lost the fight against Malignaggi. And from that point, I think he fought Maidana next and got embarrassed and took that loss and everything. But here we're talking about Rigondeaux, once again, jumped up two weight classes. And like I said, that does matter because that's you're fighting, you're out of your comfort zone. And in boxing, your body's fine-tuned for that weight class. That is, unless you outweigh or you're outgrowing your weight class in that point. That's not the case with Rigondeaux, right? But still, despite that, I expected a lot more than what I saw, and kind of what led me to believe that I actually follow Rigondeaux on Twitter, and I saw a lot of his daily postings saying like this is what he was made of, this is a fight that he's been dreaming of, things like that, things that this fight is going to help define his career going forward. And when I kind of insist buy into that, and then this is what I get. Minimal punch output, and that doesn't totally surprise me. But the thing about it, when you're at that twilight moment in your career, you have to step outside yourself. You have to demand more of yourself. So I need a higher punch output. Yeah, we all know he's the ultimate defensive fighter. We know that, but you still gotta let your hands go. And the thing about it, it's a fight, and there's definitely dirty tactics employed by Lomachenko. Just the clasping, just hitting after the bell, stuff like that. Just a fight, and we've seen that before with other fighters too, where people use their elbows and headbutts and stuff like that. You know what I mean? That goes back to Holyfield, all kind of people, you know. But still, back to Rigondeaux, I wanted more. We didn't get more, and I mean now there's this semi-controversy that there's something wrong with his hand or his wrist or something like that. Is that really the case? If that's the case, is he going to have like an MRI going forward after the fight to confirm any possible injury? And if so, will those results be revealed? So that's all. It's so many different angles from this fight that I want to know. Because in a sense, I almost want to say I feel kind of cheated because I wanted a better performance from him. You know. So now that Lomas won the fight, now his legend lives on. You know, and continues to get built up, which is kind of crazy at the same time. So I think a lot of us wanted him for room for Loma to lose, just kind of so they can just come kill that machine that they're trying to build with him, make him the next big thing in boxing and things like that. At what is it, 9-1, 10-1, whatever it is, and stuff like that. It's just disappointing. You know, you have a fight with two people that with the records that they have, the credentials, the 2 gold medals apiece, the amateur records, things like that. Heralded boxers, and only to get this. It's like getting a steak, and it falls on the floor, but you get the taste of it, but you don't want the rest of it. It's just spoiled. So, main thing going forward, I want to see if Loma really indeed has a hand injury. That seems questionable. But other than that, it's just disappointing for that build-up, and this is what we get.
All right, so we got everybody that's had their comments in reference to this fight between Vasyl Lomachenko and Guillermo Rigondeaux, and now it's basically my turn here, and kind of like struggling to go at this because after the fight I was really frustrated about what was going on, but I wanted to, kind of like start this off to see if I could get a whole little theme from it. But I'm gonna hit up World Ranked here real quick. World Ranked, what is like one of the things that you often look into or I kind of like look into in reference to the aftermath of a lot of fights. What's that particular word that we kind of bring up? And Terrell actually said the word, the C word.
Conspiracy?
Correct. That word is conspiracy. And so, after the fight, I was kind of upset, and then I got up today, and then I was thinking about a few things, and that word kind of was coming up a good amount of times when it came to this particular fight between Vasyl Lomachenko and Guillermo Rigondeaux. For me, this fight, it kind of came to us in kind of weird circumstances to a certain point, and it almost looks very similar to the circumstance when Vasyl Lomachenko fought Nicholas Walters. And one person that I follow a lot in reference to like news and things like that, he has a hashtag called Connect the Dots. And I'm going to see if I could use it here. Everything between the whole thing with Lomachenko and Rigondeaux and Lomachenko and Walters seems similar. You have Rigondeaux that earlier in his career, he kind of like derailed a hype machine for a Barbarian by the name of Nonito Donaire. After that Nonito Donaire fight, you really didn't hear that much from Guillermo Rigondeaux while he was with Top Rank. And he ended up splitting with Top Rank and ended up with Rock Nation. And Jay, we've talked about this before. Him signing with Rock Nation was a mistake in itself, but he already had the issue of other fighters not wanting to fight him. He's held titles at 122, and you had other world champions that wouldn't even fight him at 122. They would rather fight each other than fight Rigondeaux at the 122-pound division. They would rather move up to 126 than fight Rigondeaux at the 122-pound division. So here you have Guillermo Rigondeaux there hanging around as the, I think it's the IBO super featherweight champion and the, not super featherweight, super bantamweight champion and the WBA quote-unquote super bantamweight champion. And, you know, he was able to fight Joseph Agbeko and then had a good little, you know, hiatus and, you know, then fought a couple of other people. And then you had the fight against him and Moises Flores where you had that first round. And he was basically tagging Flores with the counter left, and then, you know, basically hit him just right after the bell, and then Moises Flores ended up doing a little job in reference to being knocked down or being knocked out or whatever it is. And then after that particular fight, and this was like on HBO, there was like highly questionable commentary coming from everybody's favorite commentator, Jim Lampley. And he's like, oh, they should just strip him. They should strip Guillermo Rigondeaux. That was a dirty move by him, and he should be changed. It should be disqualified and this and that. And I was like, just be quiet, shut up. It wasn't really that serious. It wasn't even, to me, it wasn't even at the level of, Jose Euskadagui and Andre Durrell. It wasn't even at that level for me, so to speak. But, you know, even with that, you had Durrell. He was able to get up, and then he went back down, too. So both of them kind of, like, did a semi-job. However, the way that, you know, Lamptey was talking about Guillermo Rigondeaux, basically flaming him, that's kind of like been their type of commentary towards Rigondeaux ever since he's been on HBO, ever since that Nonito-Donaire fight. And then, you know, they were able to get this particular fight with Vasyl Lomachenko, a fight that Rigondeaux had been pursuing for a while when Lomachenko was on the lower weight classes, because you had, you know, basically you had Lomachenko, you know, there at featherweight, you know, for a little bit in 2015 before he moved up to super featherweight in 2016. And so this fight could have happened, you know, at featherweight, you know, around 2015, but it didn't necessarily happen because you had Rigondeaux already broken away from Top Rank. So now you get this fight with Vasyl Lomachenko. You have to move up 2 divisions to get the fight with Vasyl Lomachenko. You have to take a fight purse that's 1/3 of what Vasyl Lomachenko was taking. And so you already have those odds stacked against you for starters. Now, before the fight, you have, you know, Lomachenko trying to see what's going on in reference to clinching or holding, because Lomachenko already dealt with that before with Orlando Salido. That's why he couldn't necessarily make those adjustments on Salido, whether that, you know, fight result was controversial or not. He was, you know, he didn't necessarily react well to those clinches and those, you know, tricks of the trade that Orlando Salido was doing. So here, in that first round between Vasyl Lomachenko and Guillermo Rigondeaux was actually doing something against Lomachenko, and what his strategy to me was that try to keep his range on Lomachenko, and when they came up close, try to do something to tie him up so that Lomachenko wouldn't be able to use his offense against them on the inside. But if Lomachenko is showing that, hey, I'm getting held like this, and he's not necessarily doing, at first he wasn't necessarily doing anything to break away from it. Then he tried his, you know, duck down, crouch, and try to pull away and stuff like that, instead of allowing the rep to, you know, do his job, have him break off the clinch and things like that. So you have that going on in the first couple of rounds. You have, like I was saying with my dude Greg, while, you know, Rigondeaux was throwing punches, while Lomachenko was throwing punches and Rigondeaux was going down low, Lomachenko was having a couple of instances where he was hitting him behind the head, and nothing was said about that, about him hitting behind the head. And people were talking about, well, that's self-inflicted by Rigondeaux. He shouldn't be ducking down there for Lomachenko to hit behind the head. And my response to that is that, wait, Rigondeaux's right there in front of Lomachenko. And you mean to tell me that Lomachenko can't stand right there and see that he's ducking right there and not step off to the side? Where he's actually had a couple of cases in that particular fight where he did step off to his right and end up going behind Rigondeaux. So there was that happening. Then you had the whole thing with the hitting after the bell, where they were in a clinch. Rigondeaux was trying to get away from Lomachenko. He shrugged him off after the bell, and then when the referee was right there, right in front of both of them, Lomachenko hits Rigondeaux in the face, and nothing was said about it. And when I saw that, to me, I was basically turned off from the whole fight, because something to me just said, hey, something is up with this. You can't. If somebody, I could get it where Lomachenko has the skill. That's what everybody knows. Lomachenko is very skilled. He's very talented. We understand that. But if you, as an opponent, are not able to fight your fight because the referee's not allowing you to fight your fight, that's a whole different story. And so with that whole injury thing, some people try to use that as an excuse. I say that he most likely was injured because he really didn't use the hands like he wanted to after that first round. But I mean, it just seemed like a whole setup to me from the beginning that Bob Arum had a little part in. And when I look at the thing for the CompuBox stats, and it's like saying that, Lomachenko threw more. Of course, we expected Lomachenko to throw more, but he didn't necessarily land at a great percentage against Rigondeaux. He was only 16% connect percentage, on Rigondeaux. But, it wasn't like he was necessarily blowing them away or anything like that. He was just throwing a lot more than Rigondeaux. It wasn't like landing significantly more than Rigondeaux was. It was just that he was throwing more. So it wasn't like Rigondeaux was in serious trouble in this particular fight. It was just that Rigondeaux just didn't get his counterpunches off like he wanted to. But to me, I kind of put it to where World Rank was saying, I think it was before the fight where you posted this on Twitter, World Rank, or I think it was right after the fight. I said, look, I would not be surprised if this was Rigondeaux's last professional fight. And the reason why I say that is, you said it before the fight, okay. And the reason why I kind of believe that is because there was not really that many options for Guillermo Rigondeaux at 122. You have 126 pounds. The title holders at 126 pounds didn't want to fight him. Santa Cruz didn't want to fight him. You had Carl Frampton that didn't want to fight him. Lee Selby, who was at that fight card by Frank Warren earlier yesterday, he doesn't want to fight him. Abner Morris doesn't want to fight him. No one's really heard of Gary Russell Jr. since April, so who knows who Gary Russell wants to fight. And Oscar Valdez, if I'm not mistaken, is he a top-ranked guy or he's a golden boy guy? One of those two. So you can't necessarily see Guillermo Rigondeaux facing any of those top guys in the 126-pound division. So as far as I know, where else can Guillermo Rigondeaux go? He can't even go back down to 122 because he's stripped of one of those belts he had, which has happened before, to add. He has been stripped of titles before. So here he is. He loses to Lomachenko and gets stripped of that 122-pound title yet again. So with that, I kind of put up that theory and believe World Ranked in saying that this could be Guillermo Rigondeaux's last fight because there's nowhere else, there's nothing else out there for him. There's no other options out there for him. So that's pretty much my whole synopsis about that fight. Open the floor for any reactions to that.
When did he get stripped at 122? I thought he still had that belt.
No, that was posted actually a couple days before this fight took place. Was that if Guillermo Rigondeaux lost his fight to Vasyl Lomachenko, he would end up losing or being stripped of that WBA super, super, quote unquote, super bantamweight championship.
Now, when I said that it's a possibility he wasn't fighting, not only did I think he was going to lose, but also to what you said as well, because the politics of the sport has already blackballed him after the Donaire fight, and I figured by them stripping him and him losing this fight, that there's no reason for anyone to want to see him or to have to fight him. You get what I'm saying? I'm not gonna say it was a conspiracy, but I can just see it in the fight. If he lost that fight, there's every reason that anybody could say there's no reason why I should fight Rigo. He doesn't have a belt. He just lost his biggest fight. He doesn't bring any money. Any excuse that you can make to avoid him can come up now. So that speaks to your point, like, and what I was saying last night. Like, if he loses this fight, and I said for various reasons this could be his last fight. I didn't say because he's going to lose or because Loma was going to dominate. I just felt like he's been blackballed before, and this is more reason to blackball him because he doesn't bring any monetary things to the table, nor does he no longer have a belt. And you can just tell that that's what they want to do because they've already stripped him of a belt that he wasn't even fighting for last night.
Yeah, man, and it's just the way he quit, man. I mean, you know, without showing any type of reports on his hand or anything like that, I mean, his stock has fallen, and that's even more of a demise for him. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. Rigondeaux right now is to pieces. He's got to put his fucking head together. His promotional, he's better leave Rock fucking Nation, and if he can make amends with whatever fucking fights you have left in you, do that with Top Rank because they were taking care of him. He had a big fucking following in Macau, China. He was getting paid. His greed is what fucked Rigondeaux up, and I want everybody to fucking pay attention and take it as a lesson. He's the fucking dummy that allowed Santa Cruz and fucking Frampton to fucking politic when he had that WBO. Remember that shit? He allowed them to fucking politic enough for them to strip him from that belt to fucking make these two fight for it. That shit was retarded. All at the end to give it back to him. That shit was retarded, bro. He's a dummy. I call him fucking. I call him fucking pussy, fucking Puss and Diao now.
And to follow up on that, Tekken Promotion had put a post out yesterday saying that exactly what you just said, that he messed it up in Japan because when they were naming the fighters, about 6 fighters from Kameda to some other guys that they could have had lined up for Rigondeaux after that first Japanese fight, but he chose a different route, and he had everything going against him, to quitting, to having a bad performance in his most biggest fight, to his promotion thing, to being blackballed before everything that he has everything going against him right now. It's difficult to see him to try to get back on top.
Yep. Fucking Puss and Diao.
Well. Now I'm gonna have to see or disagree with that to an extent, and the reason why I say that is because, and this is why I have a hate relationship with Top Rank, and I've had a hate relationship with Top Rank for years. Is because they put favoritisms towards certain fighters. And when there's an instance where that fighter that they put favoritism to gets matched up against somebody that has the skill or the ability to defeat that said fighter, then Bob Arum basically shuts them out or shuts them down. And this was clear to me after that Nonito Donaire fight in 2013. Rigondeaux nearly shut Donaire out. And Donaire was the guy that was supposed to be the next Pacquiao.
Yeah, but he was on his way out.
They match him up with Rigondeaux. They match him up with Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux basically shuts him out. Almost gets a clean sweep if it wasn't for that knockdown that was suffered on round 10 by Rigondeaux. Not soon after the fight, Arum says, well, I mean, you have Rigondeaux there, but he's just somebody that doesn't necessarily bring the action or things like that, and we can't necessarily do that much with a guy like Rigondeaux. And when I heard that, I was like, you know what? He's basically just X'd out Rigondeaux right then and there. And soon after, you didn't hear anything much from Rigondeaux for 8 months after that fight until he fought Joseph Akbeko. And then soon after is when he eventually ended up leaving Top Rank. I don't know if he was there with Top Rank for that Amagasa fight, but that Amagasa fight,
he got knocked down
he
twice
was there
by Amagasa. He got knocked down twice
by
Amagasa.
Okay, So in that Amagasa fight, that was, to me, where you're kind of like bringing up that whole thing with the Japan ordeal. But for me, while that was probably in front of him, you still had that whole thing back and forth with Bob Arum and Guillermo Rigondeaux, where Bob Arum just saying, hey, I really can't do much with Guillermo Rigondeaux because of the style of Guillermo Rigondeaux. And to me, when you say that about a fighter right off the bat, then you're basically dismissing a fighter after you had, so much stock put into the fighter that he just nearly put to school. So there wasn't really that much left, or there wasn't that much of a ceiling for Rigondeaux under Top Rank, because Arum wasn't going to put him there. Arum wasn't going to put him there.
Yeah, he was. I think what you got, like misunderstood with what Bob Arum was saying at the time, because think about it, Guillermo Rigondeaux's only 16 fights in. That time, he must have been about maybe 8, 9, maybe 10 fights in, right? So you got to think about it. I mean, they really couldn't do anything with him at the time. It was Guillermo Rigondeaux that decided to just get up and leave. And it was evident because if you take a look at what he's been doing ever since he left Top Rank, he's been looking for big names with big money. He hasn't been worried about his no type of legacy. He's just been worried about his pockets. So, at the time that Bob Arum said that he's not really marketable, he's not marketable, there's really nothing I can do with him at the time. So basically, you know what I'm saying? That's what he's gonna say. That's what Bob Arum is gonna say. So I had to basically put my money on Nonito Donaire, regardless he was fucking finished, So he did what he had to do, and Guillermo Rigondeaux should have not given up on himself. He should have believed in fucking Top Rank. You know what I mean? Because think about it. If you got a premature fighter who just beat one of the superstars in your stables, and you're looking at him, but you're like, okay, but you know what? You can't do that again, though, because now you're gonna have a fucking problem. And now when I got to try to get you fights now and shit, you're gonna have to show and prove. And what was Guillermo Rigondeaux doing within the Frampton and the Santa Cruz? He flopped out and let these two fucking do their business with his title. All to strip him to give it back to him at the end after these two guys move up on him? That was crazy, brother.
Yeah, well, you got that, but I mean, to me, it is basically on Arum to try to do that. I mean, I see where you're going with the whole thing about Rigondeaux fighting Donaire at the level, pretty much at the level of his professional career that Rigondeaux was doing. But on the flip side, you have Lomachenko, where Lomachenko, in his first professional fight, he begged Bob Arum to have that type of a high-level fight for his first professional fight, and he was able to get that done. And then the next fight over was when he was fighting for a vacant world title against Orlando Salido and ended up losing. But even with that, he was still, able to, fight for a world title in his second professional fight. So, yeah, you do have something there with Guillermo Rigondeaux and being able to, defeat Nonito Donaire at the level that he was at in his professional career. But on the flip side, you have Lomachenko that was able to fight for world titles in his second professional fight. So that's the whole hang-up that I have in reference to the comparison that how a Rigondeaux was built up under Top Rank in comparison to how Lomachenko was built up in Top Rank. And it's part of why a lot of people, like as mentioned, were rooting for Rigondeaux in this particular fight against Lomachenko, was because we just wanted somebody, or they just wanted somebody to shut Bob Arum up in reference to this whole thing with hype and putting it behind fighters and how much hype he puts behind certain fighters. Because in the case of Lomachenko, there's, that instance where he says, hey, Lomachenko is the most skilled guy that I've ever seen since Muhammad Ali. And I'm like, come on, man.
Lomachenko is the most built-up fighter that I had made ever since Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali. I mean, it's just right there. But I'm like, man, and I'm like, come on, man. This is the type of thing that, you know, I try to stay away from, or, you know, say, you know, why are you doing this for certain fighters? We see the talent in Vasyl Lomachenko. Everybody does.
Yeah.
But why are you putting so much behind a Lomachenko when you have other guys that are higher ranked pound for pound by many in your boy Terrence Crawford, but you don't see Bob Arum saying, hey, Terrence Crawford is that guy. He can fight anybody in any weight. He could win at super lightweight, and he's going up to welterweight, and he'll end up beating everybody at welterweight. No, you don't really see that. Oh, and I got to do this one more time as Bob Arum, because like there's one thing I like when he said, stumble bum after stumble bum. But I mean, it's just something that I like keep getting hung up with on Bob Arum, is that he continues to go with that whole thing about promoting or boosting certain fighters, whether it's for business reasons or anything else. My thing is, boost the fighters that have the skill, that have the wherewithal, that could do it, you know, basically do it all regardless of who they are or where they come from. And if you can't do that, then I can't really trust you as a promoter. I can't do it.
Right.
But you already know why it is Bob Arum does that.
Yeah. I'm only doing my job, fellas. I'm a promoter. I've got to pass everybody up. Everybody I promote, I mean, I can't wipe their ass, but I'm going to promote them the best I can. Now, if I say Lomachenko, who happens to look like a Backstreet Boy, you know, if I say he's as good as Muhammad Ali, well, God damn it, he's better than Muhammad Ali.
That sounds about right. That's something real quick.
Yeah. What happened?
No, 646. You had something?
Yeah. Well, if you look at Bob Arum's history, unless you're a heavyweight, he always puts a ceiling on what he feel like his lower weight black fighters can do. That's one of the huge reasons why Floyd left. That's one of the reasons why Tim Bradley was beefing with him for years. And that's probably ultimately going to be the reason why Terrence Crawford leaves him, because he always puts a ceiling on what he feels he can sell to the public with his black fighters. Unless you're a heavyweight, of course, because everyone loves the heavyweights. But if you're in the lower class divisions, if you're not Mexican, or if you don't have your Eastern European people, he's not going to promote you the way that he should promote you.
I can agree with that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I could agree with that, because I exactly what you're saying. I've seen that upon certain fighters. I would say mid 90s to late 80s, and he's done that with a couple of fighters, man. And I have to agree with you on that. I do.
Well, the thing about it is that I'm trying to get the best fight stage possible. I'm kidding, man. But
I'm talking with my hand up my ass simply because I look like Kermit the fucking Frog.
Oh man.
All right, listen, guys. I've got to go, man. But yo, listen, JR, man. Thank you, yo, guys. It was a pleasure on the panel, man. I've got to cut it short because I got something to do with the family. But listen, JR, man, you got a great fucking blog talk show, man. You catch me here every time I can do it, my brother. And you guys, man, stay good. God bless everybody, man. # come back to boxing. Thank you, JR.
All right, no doubt. Hashtag come back to boxing. And y'all be sure to catch Jay Cotto out there on Facebook and also on YouTube out there. So, hit hashtag come back to boxing. Jay Cotto, Jay then the period Cotto on YouTube, and you'll see some of his videos out there, including more of that Bob Arum commentary over on his channel. So be sure to catch that there. Just getting into this overtime section of the show here, I just wanted to have, try to get that main event with Loma and Rigondeaux out of the way before the overtime section. But I wanted to, see if I could touch on, more of the results that were happening on Saturday, including the card over in England where you had Lee Selby fighting on the card. You also had James DeGale on the card against Caleb Truax for the IBF super middleweight title. That was the main event over there with the Frank Warren card that was happening pretty much on Saturday afternoon there in England. That included Daniel Dubois featured on the card. You also had like a couple of other people that boxing fans were focusing on, including Anthony Yard there at light heavyweight. So you had Daniel Dubois ended up getting a second-round KO win over Dorian Darch. You had Anthony Yard in a tough fight in there as part of the card. But the thing with Caleb Truax against James DeGale, you had James DeGale returning to the ring after a long layoff as he had that title unification fight between him and Badou Jack in January of this year over at the Barclays Center. It ended up being a draw. I think suffered a couple of injuries or whatever in that fight. Going up against Caleb Truax, Caleb Truax being a former world title challenger there, had one opportunity to get a world championship, but was unable to do it. But he had his second opportunity here against James DeGale at the Copper Box Arena there. And this fight here, it was just, to me, it looked like a barometer of where James DeGale was after that hard fight that he had against Badou Jack. And just didn't seem like he was fully back as far as like in-ring shape. But you had Caleb Truax was there, game. He was coming forward for pretty much round 1 to round 12. He had an instance where he seriously hurt James DeGale in round 5, but wasn't able to score a knockdown in that particular round. Was able to move forward into the second half of the fight. There were instances where James DeGale was, using his boxing skills, but there was more instances where James DeGale was having himself backed into the ropes to, allow Caleb Truax to do his work instead of, trying to be at the middle of the ring and use his boxing skills and try to use his movement in order to, throw off the timing of James DeGale. But it ended up going 12 rounds, went to the scorecards. You had Dave Parrish scored about 114-114. You had Benoit Roussel scored 115-112, and Alex Levin scored 116-112 for Caleb Truax. And so Truax is the new IBF super middleweight champion there, and moves to 29-3-2, being somebody from Minnesota getting that super middleweight title after losing the opportunity to win a WBA middleweight championship against Daniel Jacobs a couple of years ago. So had to get that in there real quick for Caleb Truax getting that win over James DeGale. And of course, part of that co-feature in that bout or in that card, you had Lee Selby defending the IBF featherweight title against Eduardo Ramirez. Ended up getting a unanimous decision win there. I didn't really want to talk much about that fight because that was like an uneventful fight to me. Lee Selby didn't really do anything much to hurt Ramirez. I think Ramirez came in overweight for that particular fight. So he wasn't, he came in overweight and couldn't really win the title. Lee Selby just didn't, do much to impress me. He'll end up fighting, looks like they were going to try to put a fight between Lee Selby and Sam Warrington, or Josh Warrington, for the IBF featherweight title, as Josh Warrington is the number one contender. But for me, Selby didn't look like he was a guy that at featherweight that could really beat any of the title holders at featherweight, and that includes the WBA regular champion Abner Mares. So that's one thing that I had to go through real quick. And as far as that card there in England, any comments about what happened there in England, real quick?
I did say DeGale was washed last week, even though I expected him to get past Truax. I did say that after that Jack fight, he was past it. They clearly showed in this fight. DeGale cannot, every fight he does, when he fights on his back foot, he gets his ass handed to him. From the Truax fight to the Jack fight to the Porky Medina fight, dude, if you stay on your front foot, he did it in the Groves fight and he did it in the Darrell fight. If you stay on your front foot, dude, you're better that way. And you keep going back to the ropes, keep trying to fight off your back foot. You're not good at it. Stop it. He needs to get that in his head, because he's not going to go. He can't return back to the top of the division if he continues to fight on his back foot. He's not good at it.
Yeah, he kind of like causes his own problems by doing that, by fighting on his back foot. And, doing that, he gets himself in a lot of trouble. And, you saw, where if he doesn't really fight on his back foot, he's pretty much has like an advantage against most of his opponents. But he still gets into that habit of doing that, and that ends up, being his, it ended up being his downfall in this fight against Caleb Truax there. 646, you were able to catch it?
Yeah, I caught most of that card. It was like a PBC event, basically. The card wasn't really that interesting. The undercard was just a bunch of mismatches. The DeGale fight, I already knew DeGale was done. I said it after his fight where battled Jack, that Jack took his soul. I already knew DeGale had nothing for him. It's over for him. Truax, if you think about it, Truax is a middleweight. Truax, has done nothing at super middleweight. He's been a middleweight basically his whole career. He came up and he took the title. If I was DeGale, I'll take a nice, good, long vacation and just seriously think about hanging it up. Hope he saved his money, because there are no fighters at 168 that he's going to really have anything for at the end of the day, because Battle Jack took too much out of him.
True. He didn't necessarily have much of an answer there for Truax's constant pressure, and ended up getting himself in lots of trouble, like I was saying before, and that ended up being his downfall. What was interesting in reference to that particular fight, during that fight, was that it was saying if DeGale ended up getting through this fight with Caleb Truax and still had the IBF Super Middleweight Championship, he was trying to look for getting a fight with the World Boxing Super Series winner at Super Middleweight. And I think for that, I think he was trying to see if he could get like another one of those quote-unquote super fights in the UK, because, you do have the semifinal with Groves and Eubanks Jr. on one side, and, if the winner of that fight ends up winning the World Boxing Super Series, then you could have a unification fight at super middleweight at the UK with DeGale and either Groves or Eubanks Jr. that would probably, have a lot of interest there in the United Kingdom. But that ended up not being the case there. Terrell, you were able to see any highlights or something there from DeGale and Truax?
Yeah, I didn't catch that fight. I'm going to definitely catch that this weekend so I can review that. But kind of like what we discussed in the group on Facebook, DeGale admitted after the fight that he think he came back too soon after his shoulder surgery. He thought they should have sat out the rest of the year and came back the first quarter next year. He didn't. So, nevertheless, he lost. And now Trix has that belt. We'll see what he can do with it. So really kudos to him for that going forward. But it's kind of, one kind of thing about that, too, like we talk about when DeGale had that fight against, what's the guy's name that beat him up and took the belt? What was his name? The guy that moved up.
Oh, Battle Jack. The draw.
Yeah, Battle Jack.
Battle Jack. Yeah. So that was a pretty much rough and tough fight for him. And kind of what we talk about from time to time is the fact is that when you have a fight, per se, how much is it a physical fight, mental fight? Is it mentally taxing on you? And does it just take some of the years of your boxing away? So now it's like, I know DeGale had the shoulder surgery, but did that take some of the years off his boxing shelf life? So we'll see going forward. I mean, like I said, you really can't give excuses because you signed a contract, you went to training camp. If you knew you couldn't make it, then you back out of it. If you're not ready for it in all aspects of the game, so that didn't happen. He went forward to fight, and he lost his belt. So it is what it is now. So now we have a new belt holder at the weight class, and we'll see what happens with Trix.
Yeah, no doubt on that. I was trying to see something in reference to, Truax kind of like holding that belt. You have, they're still trying to see if they could make a rematch between Andre Durrell and Jose Uzcategui, but I'm not sure if, that fight is going to take place the way that, the ending of that fight at the MGM National Harbor came out. I don't think that Uzcategui and his team wants to give Durrell and his camp, another chance of trying to move up in the IBF super middleweight ranking. So that part is going to be up in the air, and it remains to be seen what's going to happen between those two. But with Caleb Truax holding the IBF super middleweight championship, he'll see if they'll have like a voluntary defense, maybe against a Caleb Plant or something like that. Hopefully, your boy Floyd and TMT doesn't. They might try to make a move on seeing if they can get Truax in the ring with their guy J. Leon Love. So don't be surprised if that fight ends up being talked about as a possible matchup in 2018. All right. Just wanted to see it move forward here since I didn't get to this part in the live section of the show. You did have another fight card that was in Las Vegas at Mandalay Bay Event Center that was broadcasted by HBO. It was headlined, by a fight between Orlando Salido. That was in there, basically in the ring, fighting there against Roman. And in that particular fight, it was, something where it kind of looked like Salido was, people kind of expected it to be a stay busy fight for Orlando Salido. Over the course of the year, they were trying to see if Salido was going to have a rematch with Vasyl Lomachenko, but that fight never came to fruition. And so he ends up fighting Miguel Roman, who was somebody that, was kind of like a guy similar to Orlando Salido in reference to, him being in the middle of a lot of fights, a lot of wins that he's been able to get, a lot of losses that he's suffered there. But it was a back and forth fight between those two. There were instances where a couple of rounds, like in the 6th and 7th round, that it was like a phone booth round. And I said, like, during the fight there, I said, man, this looks like Salido Vargas all over again. But it was just a battle of attrition between both of those guys. And Miguel Roman, it looked like he was just like the younger version of Orlando Salido. He was able to score a knockdown on Salido in round 4. He was able to get another one in round 8, and then by round 9, it just ended up being too much for Orlando Salido to take, and Miguel Roman ended up scoring the TKO victory in round 9 over Orlando Salido to get his 58th win of his professional career, going 58-12-0, while Orlando Salido fell to 44 wins, 14 losses, and 4 draws. And the news about this particular fight was that after the fight, Orlando Salido announced his retirement from the sport of boxing. So he is also stepping away from the sport there, basically, being like one of those guys that was like, I would say, quote, a fighter's fighter. Not necessarily, somebody that you could point out that has the overall skill, but had the will to basically win fights, a lot of fights that, he wasn't necessarily favored to win. Of course, you had the split decision win that he scored against Vasyl Lomachenko in 2014. Was a former, featherweight world champion, but, also lost to a lot of, known fighters that are out there. Also had like a no decision against Ghost Guerrero, lost to Juan Manuel Marquez, back in 2004. Yuri Ortiz Gamboa, like I said, lost to Mikey Garcia, Rocky Martinez. So he's basically fought just about anybody and everybody almost in the lower weight classes. But after this fight, he just said, it's basically been enough. He's been in the game since 1996, so 21 years as a professional fighter there, and he finally cut it short here after this fight. So that was the result that I wanted to get in with that main event. Any comments on Orlando Salido's career and anything that could happen with Miguel Roman?
Nah, I think you pretty much said it all. Just want to wish him well on his retirement. He is the only guy that beat Lomachenko in the pros, so he'll always have that little notch on his belt. They can't take that away from him. Roman, he maybe has a couple more fights left in him. He can't possibly go through the punishment that he went through in last night's fight, man, because that was a war, man. I thought he was done in the second round. I thought Salido hadn't finished. He came back. He did what he had to do. That was a damn good fight, one of the better fights of the year. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again.
Well, I'll say real quick that I was shocked to hear about the retirement of Salido and everything. I mean, this guy has been in a million wars. We already know that. We respect him for that. And privately, I was hoping that he would win last night. And in hopes, in the event that Loma won and Loma did win, that these two could finally get back in the ring again. So we already know that Salido's the one that gave Lomachenko his only loss and everything. But getting rough like that, and once again, we talk about does a rough fight take shelf life off your boxing life? and certainly just did for Salido with him announcing their retirement. I mean, but at the same time, we know that we see many cases where people retire, and yet we'll see them again in the ring. So I'm not saying he's coming back because it's definitely too soon for us to see that. He definitely needs time to let his body heal up, his mind heal up, things like that. Think about it, around February, March, Loma should have his next fight lined up, whether that be at 130 again or does he decide to move up to 135. And still, if none is really solid coming to fruition for Lomachenko, perhaps that's enough time for Salido to heal up and once again get back in the ring with Lomachenko. Because remember that prior to Loma fighting Rigondeaux, we know that there were definitely negotiations going back and forth between the Loma side and the Salido camps and try to get that rematch set. But I think there was just a difference with the money as far as why that didn't happen. Because there were definitely dates available and there were definitely venues available for that to happen, but nevertheless it didn't happen. But anyways, kudos to Salido. Hope he heals up. And I would love to see him again in the ring. I hope he against Loma. Because like you guys said, really what's left at 130 for Loma, there's reluctance by a lot of guys in and around the division in regards to fighting Lomachenko. So why not once again advance that one loss on your record? So we'll see going forward.
World Rank, you got anything?
Nah, I mean, neither one of them really impressed me. They're just, they average guys. I don't want to see Salido fight again. He had a good career, beat some good guys. I don't want to see him get murdered by Lomachenko. I don't want to see him get murdered by anybody else. He's done. He should just go ahead and call it a career like he did.
Yeah, and one additional thing on that, following after the fight, that you had HBO commentary out there, and you had Max Kellerman talking about the thing with Salido, and then you had Andre Ward there having his comments on Salido, and what Andre Ward was saying was that in retrospect he was saying that in the fighter meetings when they were talking with Salido, it said that he was talking to a tired, quote unquote tired fighter, somebody that maybe had basically had that fight mentality in him, so to speak, but his body just couldn't really do the things that he could have necessarily done to probably pull off the victory against Miguel Roman. And so that's, why it kind of ended up where, Salido, even though he was a game fighter throughout that whole fight, it's just that he didn't necessarily have enough to get a win against Miguel Roman there. All right, now I wanted to get into this co-feature of that fight card that was on HBO at Mandalay Bay Hotel, which had the vacant IBF Super Featherweight Championship on the line with two high-ranked contenders there. Kenichi Ogawa against Tevin Farmer. You had Tevin Farmer there at 25-4-1. Kenichi Ogawa there at 22-1. With Ogawa basically having his only loss over in Japan, and basically he was having his first professional fight stateside against Tevin Farmer, and here it just looked like Tevin Farmer had the advantage. He was catching Ogawa with big shots, big power shots there. I think it was with his lead right hand or whatnot. Seeing that he was pretty much controlling the pace of the fight from what I was seeing for most of the fight, and then it ended up going to the scorecards there, and you had Tim Cheatham scoring about 116-112 for Tevin Farmer. You had Max DeLuca scored 115-113 for Ogawa, and Bert Krebitz had the fight 116-112 for Ogawa, giving Ogawa the IBF Super Featherweight Championship with the quote-unquote win over Tevin Farmer. And I was saying right after that fight, I was like, ain't no way that Kenichi Ogawa won 8 rounds in that fight. And I'm certainly see that, well, I say that he didn't win 7 rounds in that fight either with Tevin Farmer. Tevin Farmer outlanded him overall. He had more of the power shots. I think he had more jabs landed too. I mean, all across the board, it seemed like Tevin Farmer had the upper hand in this particular fight. But the judges, I mean, 2 of the judges, Burt Clements and Max DeLuca, just saw it differently there in this particular fight. So you have Ogawa as the IBF champion there by split decision. Just want to get y'all reactions to that because, I mean, I've seen it all across, like, social media ever since after the fight and all across from, like, fighters, from promoters, from analysts and fans that this was like a straight-up robbery. What do y'all think?
I thought it was a clear robbery. I said as much as soon as the fight was over. I mean, I'm not surprised. You can't be surprised at anything that goes on in boxing anymore. But, I feel for Tevin Farmer because, honestly, who the fuck is Tevin Farmer? He's not going to get another shot. This is probably it for him. He's not a big name. He's not he doesn't have a big following. He's not like a huge puncher. So this is probably it for him. And I was hearing Max saying, oh, well, he really gave a good account of himself and maybe he made some new fans. We're going to get another fight. That's just window dressing, man. He's not going to get any more big fights. It's over for him. He should have took the Gervonta Davis fight when it was offered to him. That was probably his best shot at stardom. Now he has a loss on his record to a virtual unknown on a card that I'm sure when the ratings come out won't be that highly rated. No one's going to be checking for him anymore. He's just going to be the lower level fighter that he's always been. Hopefully he can work his way up. I feel bad saying that because he did deserve the victory, but it's back to the drawing board for you, buddy.
World Ray, you on?
Yeah, now I got a conspiracy theory regarding why he didn't win the title. Because it's not.
All right,
it
here
wasn't
we go. Another conspiracy.
Because it wasn't an Al Heyman card, and he's basically an Al Heyman fighter because he deals with Lou DiBella. Everybody else in that card was Golden Boy or Tekken, and I think they did not want that. They did not want a title to go to Al Heyman, being as the fact that they have basically all the other titles.
Yeah. And we've come here 3 times before and no one said anything.
It looks like, you said that this was like a Golden Boy type of card. And also you had, it looks like Tom Loeffler and Eddie Hearn, and of course, and you had promotions also involved in it. So there was like a lot of feelings reference to making this card become possible there. So with Ogawa being out there, that could have been something there for where the IBF title couldn't get to, the side of Al Heyman Promotions, 1, and then 2, having somebody from Japan holding the world title probably bring more interest over in the Japan side if we continue to have fights over there. Hold on a second. Seeing there's like a lot of background noise going on. So real quick, hold on.
How you doing? Good.
Oh, that's on Terrell's side. Yeah, that's on Terrell's side. My bad. So World Rank got you there back on. Yeah. So Yeah, like I was saying, it just kind of looked like there was, something, backdoor dealings going on in reference to that particular fight there, where Tevin Farmer just couldn't get the world super featherweight title there against Ogawa because maybe, like you were saying, Tevin Farmer, dealing with, another promotional company or management company was just somebody that was against, a guy like an Oscar De La Hoya or, somebody like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case there in reference to this particular decision. Let me see if I could. It was look like Terrell was like having background noise going on there, so I'm gonna put him on mute. But yeah, like Matthew, you were saying like you just don't see nothing much else for Tevin Farmer after this. I mean, you did have the whole back and forth going on between him and Gervonta Davis over in the MGM National Harbor. And you did have the little, the incident with Tevin Farmer over in Philadelphia where he injured his hand in the shooting that happened over there in Philadelphia. So, a lot of people around here, pretty much around this area, were, kind of like rooting for him to, come back and get this opportunity to, win a world title, but he wasn't necessarily able to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get that, extra opportunity as far as like winning a world title. But, an interest between Tevin Farmer and Gervonta Davis, you think that an interest in that fight is basically fizzled out with this decision loss?
It's not that the interest in that fight has fizzled out. It's that when Gervonta Davis wanted to fight, Tevin Farmer wasn't receptive to the fight, was telling him, oh, you got to earn it, you got to do this, you got to do that. So why the hell would Gervonta Davis give Tevin Farmer an opportunity to fight him when Tevin Farmer has nothing now? Tevin Farmer has no belt, he has no following, so why is it Gervonta Davis would even fight him now? He has no reason to fight him now. And they're rivals too. So why would you help this guy out when he's coming off a loss? He doesn't have a title, when he didn't want to help you out when you were looking to fight him.
Right. So I guess it's basically like, tables turn here in that particular case there for Tevin Farmer in reference to Gervonta Davis. I know I'd just be interested to see what the next course of action would be for Gervonta Davis in this case, after, him having the performance that he had in this last fight and how he handled himself in that last fight that he had, where, what his next step would be here. So I'd be interested to see what happens between Gervonta Davis and Tevin Farmer, whether they end up fighting each other or not, and if not, then where each one of those guys go from this particular point, especially in the super featherweight division, where of course you have Lomachenko out there, and also other title holders that somebody like a Gervonta Davis would be able to defeat. But I'm not necessarily sure if he'll be able to have that opportunity to fight those guys there in the super featherweight division. So just wanted to, get that out of the way here real quick. Basically, covered as much as I could in reference to all the dealings that happened over the weekend here in the sport of boxing. There's, just a couple more fights left. Key fights left, I would say, in the year 2017, particularly what's happening over in Canada on the 16th. You know, as we're going to have, you know, the WBO middleweight title on the line, as Billy Joe Saunders will take on David Lemieux there in Quebec. So I think that, you know, kind of like pretty much covers it. You will have Naoya Inoue in the junior bantamweight division defending his title on December 30th. They usually have like a, you know, they have like a big card, so to speak, over in Japan, usually at the end of the year, every year. So that to me is not a surprise. You know, with Inoue kind of like taking this fight, I'm not sure if he's going to be involved in that Superfly 2 card that is going to be in February, on February 24th. So I don't know if he's going to have a quick turnaround and be part of that card. So with him having this fight on December 30th, I doubt that he'll be part of that Superfly 2 card coming up in 2018. So basically that kind of like covers everything here on this episode of the Boxing Source radio show here. Is there anything else that any of y'all wanted to bring up here?
Don't forget Joe Horn fights on the 13th. And then we got...
Oh, yeah, early Wednesday. Yeah, it's supposed to be early, like around 6 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday morning on ESPN, yeah. It'll be against Gary Corcoran there for that WBO title. They're saying if, like, Horn gets through this fight and wins, then he may possibly fight Terrence Crawford next year. I think Terrence Crawford may have a fight at welterweight before getting this opportunity against Jeff Horn, even though he was, you know, the WBO super lightweight champion and moving up to welterweight. He's already been ranked among the top contenders for that WBO title, but I feel that he may just have one fight at welterweight before going up against the winner of Jeff Horn and Gary Corcoran. Anything else from you, 646?
Well, you know, we got Billy Joe versus David Lemieux on Saturday. That fight I'm really looking forward to. Can't wait to see that one. I know you guys call him Billy Ho Saunders, but I think he's going to put on a boxing exhibition, and he's going to take David Lemieux to school.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to see if Saunders is going to be able to keep his range away from the power of David Lemieux here next week, and see if he's going to be able to keep that WBO middleweight title and potentially get big money fights against either Canelo Alvarez or Gennady Golovkin, because I just don't see him fighting anyone else other than those two guys. World Rank, you got anything?
Nah, I just agree with Matt's sentiment. I expect Saunders to outbox him, but I'm starting to doubt if he gets the decision or not.
With it being in, with it being over in Canada, that's also a possibility that could happen out there. So that's something that may be up in the air, so to speak. Seeing if Terrell is back on here with us. Terrell, do you have anything else to say about what's coming? Just let us know.
About what now again?
The upcoming fight between Billy Joe Saunders and David Lemieux, or anything else that's happening in the rest of 2017.
Like you stated, that's definitely one of probably the last significant fight of this year. We talked about that fight in detail last week, but at this point, I'm glad we have another good fight coming up. That's going to definitely figure into the middleweight puzzle. You already know my thoughts on Billy Ho Saunders. You already know that. No need to repeat that. But just once again, just ready to wrap this year up with a solid bang. Once again, this fight's going to figure into the middleweight picture. Hopefully someone like Charlo, things of that nature can get in line and get in line for that belt and he'll be secured early next year. So regardless of who wins, Saunders or Lemieux, that belt's going to be up for grabs, and Charlotte's going to be looking to grab it. Then the other belts are locked up by Triple G, and we already know that fight for his next fight is going to be with Canelo. So not much other than that, but once again, just thanks for a great show.
All right, no doubt. Yeah, I'm kind of like looking at this particular fight, and there's the result of it as like a lot of ramifications behind it. If Saunders wins, I think he's going to be, trying to go after either, Golovkin or Canelo. If Lemieux ends up winning, I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if Oscar De La Hoya wants to make the move towards having David Lemieux fight Canelo Alvarez for that WBO title before going after Gennady Golovkin in a rematch there. They've already kind of been dismissive about making that rematch happen in May, which is usually the date or time frame that Canelo has, his fights, kind of like following the whole moniker with Floyd Mayweather. So, but he's kind of like dismissed the fight with Gennady Golovkin in May. So we're gonna see what his next course of action is going to be, specifically if David Lemieux ends up winning the WBO title over Billy Joe Saunders. So that's going to be something that, I'll take interest to here next Saturday, or coming up on Saturday, and then we'll be talking about it on Sunday, December 17th on the next episode of the Boxing Source radio show. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone that called in and, gave their take about what happened. Over the course of the week here in the sport of boxing, it was, like I was saying, it was packed, and so I knew there would be a lot to talk about. And I thank everybody for their input. 646 Matt, Terrell, World Rank, Jay Cotto, and even Bob Arum came in to talk about what happened. But, in the meantime, y'all be sure to catch the sister shows here on the Go Long Media channel, as you have the Cold Hard Truth on Sports Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. and you have Take This L Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. on the Go Long Media channel on Blog Talk Radio. And like I say at the end of every show, the point of boxing is to hit, not to hit, not to stay in the trade. On that note, I'm out. Have a good evening, everyone.